Sergey Viktorovich. In the 24th year, Russia is chairing the BRICS. The key event was the summit in Kazan, if we sum up its main results, as well as the results of the Russian presidency as a whole. What could you note?
First of all, the summit, of course, demonstrated the rapidly growing authority of the BRICS, and the rapidly growing desire of an increasing number of countries to join its work. A number of states have formally requested to join as full members. The rest expressed interest in becoming a partner country. These are the new categories that the summit in Kazan agreed upon. It was decided at this stage to limit the creation of a category of partner countries to form this group so that new members. Only last year, we increased the number from 5 to 10, so that the new full members of the BRICS and the old members would work together in the new composition. In this regard, the Russian presidency has done a lot. The work was friendly, mutual understanding on almost all major issues. There are always nuances, but the declaration that we adopted was agreed on the basis of what we call the balance of interests. No one, as it happens in Western forums, tried to put pressure on anyone. They were looking for mutually acceptable formulations, and such formulations were found on all issues. The main pathos of this declaration. This is the need to significantly increase the share of the countries of the Global South and the Global East in the mechanisms of global governance, including the UN Security Council, including the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the World Trade Organization. As far as the international monetary and financial system is concerned, the general opinion consists of two such main conclusions. The first one, to demand that developing countries, the BRICS countries, first of all, as the fastest-growing economies, receive the number of votes on the boards of directors of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, such a number of votes that would correspond to their real weight in the world economy and their share in the world gross domestic product. Now, this share of the number of votes is significantly underestimated, since the United States categorically does not want to redistribute quotas and cast its votes. At this moment in the International Monetary Fund, the United States has a package that allows the right of veto to apply to any decisions. This is a mess. The same is true of the World Trade Organization, where for many, many years, at least 10, the United States has been blocking the work of the dispute settlement body. And this is what the World Trade Organization was created for, so that inevitably arising contradictions between market participants, accusing each other of dumping, of inflating prices, of raising unreasonable tariffs, all of this should be considered by this very dispute resolution body. It is blocked, there is no quorum, and the United States is not going to fix this situation. In other words, the reform of existing institutions, of course, remains on the agenda, but in parallel, and this is the general opinion, and one of the most important conclusions of the BRICS work. At this stage, before the final part of the Russian presidency, everyone wants to create alternative payment mechanisms, interbank settlements, mechanisms using national currencies, insurance mechanisms. That will not be directed against the system that has now developed after the war, the Second World War, around the dollar as a pivot.
Той системы, которая сейчас сложилась после войны Второй мировой вокруг доллара в качестве стержня.
And a parallel system, given that the dollar is increasingly being used as such an aggressive weapon in the global economy, and no one knows who will be next.
И никто не знает, кто будет следующий.
No one is immune from such dollar arbitrariness, given the desperate situation of the United States in the modern world. When they feel that hegemony is slipping away, of course, it will not slip away quickly, but for a long time. But they want to use everything, including the most forbidden techniques, to preserve this hegemony. Therefore, to ensure against this, creating settlement systems and payment platforms that will not depend on such risks is now a common task. This task was on the agenda of the Kazan summit, and recommendations were developed at the meetings that took place all year between finance ministers and heads of central banks. They are not yet final, but they already make it possible to start creating reliable, sustainable, long-term systems. I am confident that Brazil, as the next chairman, will continue this work. Of course, the monetary and financial sector, which is a system-forming one that serves the real economy, has also received support for purely sectoral initiatives, including our initiative to begin preparations for the creation of the BRICS grain exchange, the preparation of an investment platform, and a geological platform.
Подготовку инвестиционной платформы и геологической платформы.
It was the idea of the countries, African first of all, that are part of the BRICS. In addition, we have put forward two projects: to create a working group on transport and a working group on nuclear medicine. All of this was supported at the BRICS meeting itself and in the declaration that we adopted. And when the BRICS Outreach Plus Summit took place on the next day of the Kazan event, all 35 participants, BRICS members and invited guests, this is a strange participant, supported such an attitude, such a direction of movement that developed in previous years, but which was accelerated within the framework of the Russian presidency largely because, as I have already said, we are seeing a sharp increase in interest in BRICS. BRICS is perceived, if you will, as the vanguard of the movement towards a more just world, the vanguard of the movement in defense against dictates and arbitrariness, which are still widely used by the collective West. In international relations,
how would you assess the results of the implementation of one of the priority areas for Russia under its chairmanship, strengthening interparliamentary cooperation of the participating countries?
Several meetings were held between members of the legislative bodies of the BRICS countries and their supporters in the outreach format, and simply from other countries that have not yet established any ties with the BRICS.
Из других стран, которые пока еще с БРИКС не установили никаких связей. Например,
there was a session of the Interparliamentary Union in Geneva earlier this year. Russia participates in this association. And on the sidelines of this session, there was just an event between BRICS parliamentarians and others interested in establishing relations with BRICS.
Заинтересованными в том, чтобы с БРИКС налаживать отношения.
The second issue in our interparliamentary program is the holding of the first meeting of the heads of the international affairs committees of national parliaments in the history of BRICS. It was a BRICS meeting. It will become a permanent element of the work of our association for the next years. And the 10th BRICS Parliamentary Forum took place. The structure has also existed for quite a long time. Parliamentarians from the CIS Interparliamentary Assembly were involved in its work. and the chairman of the Interparliamentary Union participated. This is the head of the Parliament of Tanzania. They tried to criticize him, this parliamentarian, but this criticism was rejected. Because the Interparliamentary Union should interact, especially since the leadership of the Interparliamentary Union should interact with all legislative structures of the participating countries. So I see a very good future for the parliamentary dimension, and we will support it in every possible way.
You have already mentioned the expansion of BRICS. It includes Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. What positive changes have taken place in the association in connection with their accession?
The growth of authority. The new BRICS, as our Chinese comrades say, the big BRICS, already produces 35% of world GDP. If we count according to purchasing power parity, the President referred to this figure, stressing that it already significantly exceeds the share of the 7 countries in the world gross product by several percent. 42% of the world's population. This is also, in my opinion, a serious figure, more than 30% of the land, and somewhere on average a quarter of exports of goods, namely goods. This figure is impressive, and it will only grow as industrial production in the BRICS member countries, and in those countries that aspire to BRICS is growing rapidly. The countries that joined, Egypt, it is the leader, the largest economy, and the most influential country in North Africa and the Arab League. The headquarters of the Arab League is located in Cairo, and the headquarters of the African Union is located in Ethiopia. This is also a partner that acts in 2 capacities, both nationally and as a representative of the entire African Union. Of course, the Islamic Republic of Iran. This is a potentially economically strong state, especially considering that it has a third one. It ranks 3rd in terms of oil reserves in the world. The Emirates is one of the leading logistics, trade, and re-export centers of the modern world economy. Everyone is well aware of this, but also Saudi Arabia. It is the leader of the Muslim world, the country where the 2 shrines of Islam are kept. Each of these participants has a well-deserved reputation, enjoys respect in the world, and, of course, strengthens the authority of the BRICS itself. И, конечно, укрепляет авторитет самого BRICS.
Another number, after the expansion, the total population of the countries included in the association exceeded 3,200,000,000. A man, in this regard, is it possible to say that today BRICS affects global processes, not only within the 10, but already in the states of Asia, Africa, Latin America?
It affects internal processes in the sense that when the population receives information about the work of BRICS, about the successes of BRICS, about the plans that BRICS puts forward and which it achieves, it wants to join this equal, mutually beneficial process, and in elections, of course, the population of the countries of the global East votes mainly for those politicians who which promote the same slogans, and which declare their desire to get closer to the BRICS in one form or another.
Которые те же лозунги продвигают и которые заявляют о стремлении сблизиться с БРИКС в том или ином виде.
I have already mentioned that a number of countries want full membership. This issue will be considered during the next year. But many people just want to be participants in events, certain BRICS events. There are more than 30 of them. And, as I said, the criteria for forming the category of partner countries have been agreed. To some of these countries, to some of the countries that have requested to join our work. The Russian presidency has sent an invitation after the Kazan summit. To such countries that enjoy consensus among the current BRICS members, more than 10, so I will say, and we have an agreement. As soon as we receive a response from the invited country, it will be announced that such the country joined the BRICS as a partner country.
Больше 10, так я скажу. И у нас договоренность, как только мы получим ответ от приглашенной страны, будет объявлено, что такая страна присоединилась к БРИКС в качестве страны-партнера.
We proceed from the fact that these countries have the opportunity to participate in almost all BRICS events.
Имеется возможность участвовать практически во всех мероприятиях БРИКС.
For sure, a separate format of meetings will remain, where only full members will participate, but everything else, including summits following the example of outreach, including meetings of ministers not only of foreign affairs, but also of ministers of industry, energy, economy, trade, healthcare, culture. We are interested in getting partner countries involved in all this work. In other words, they will practically participate in all events.
Continuing the topic, how is the interaction in the line of cultural and humanitarian cooperation between the BRICS and BRICS plus countries developing now?
There were a lot of events there, and these events aroused very, I would say, broad interests, a wide resonance. Firstly, for the first time in the summer, in June of this year, the BRICS sports games were held, but they were open to almost everyone. The number of applicants exceeded 80, 27, in my opinion, sports disciplines were represented at these games in the BRICS, and I am sure that we will strive to make them regular. In addition, firm humanitarian affairs, probably, party activity is also partly a humanitarian sphere. The first inter-party forum was held in Vladivostok in June, where about 40 parties participated. BRICS countries and partner countries, and inter-party movements that were recorded there. This is for the freedom of nations. First of all, the goal is set so that the parties, the ruling parties, and not only the ruling parties, and other parties can join, promote the task of eradicating the remnants of colonialism. There are also a number of non-self-governing territories. Colonial methods, neo-colonial methods have not disappeared from international trade. The relations of the West with Africa are characterized by colonial methods when raw materials are exported and all the added value and profit from this added value. All this is already happening in the West. The forum is very interesting and was well received. There were also novelties in our presidency related to local governance. There was a forum of cities, there was a municipal forum, and there was a very interesting discussion about how people live, and how, roughly speaking, the chairmen of city councils and village councils solve their problems. Coming from the life of the theme, therefore, I see many areas that will enrich our humanitarian and cultural cooperation, including all the BRICS countries invited next year to the song contest organized by us, the International Song Contest Intervision. We decided with our colleagues from television to revive the name that was in Soviet times. which meant a music competition of the member countries of the Council of Mutual Economic Assistance.
означало музыкальный конкурс стран-членов Совета экономической взаимопомощи.
But now, it seems to me, the intervision, open to everyone, will be such an important cultural factor. That will send a signal to humanity that it is better not to run away to their apartments, but still live together on the same planet.
Не разбегаться по своим квартирам, а все-таки жить вместе на одной планете.
With a song for life.
With a song for life.
Information exchange plays a significant role in the development of partnership relations between the BRICS and BRICS Plus countries. In this regard, how would you rate the recent opening of the BRICS Information and Cultural Media Center in Moscow?
Positively. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs had something to do with this. Our official representative participated in this event, and in the process of its preparation, in the event for the opening of this center. This year, there were very big events in the media sphere. We held the Media Summit in September, timed to coincide with the 120th anniversary of TASS. The speeches were very interesting. The participants enjoyed such communication, and we will certainly continue to use our opportunities, including the opportunities of the newly created BRICS Media and Cultural Center.
You have already mentioned that Russia is transferring the BRICS presidency to Brazil. In addition to the payment system and this topic, what other discussions are you waiting for, and what results from the work of the association in the 25th year?
I think that the payment platform, settlement mechanisms, insurance mechanisms, will be among the priorities of the Brazilian presidency. President Lula initiated the topic of the Russian chairmanship on alternative payment systems at the BRICS summit in Johannesburg last year. In response to this initiative, enshrined in the Johannesburg Declaration, finance ministers and heads of central banks worked. As I have already said, there is progress, but we need to bring it to the logical end so that there are ready-made mechanisms for use. And here, I have no doubt, our Brazilian colleagues will work with triple energy, given that this is the initiative of their president. But I think President Lula himself will make sure that this topic is one of the most important. We are counting, and I am sure that it will be so, on continuing work on Russian initiatives. This includes a grain exchange, an investment platform, a transport group, and a nuclear medicine group. These are all purely applied things that all BRICS participants are interested in, and I have no doubts about this. So we will actively support the Brazilians. And, of course, this philosophical basis of BRICS activities will remain. I am referring to the general movement for the democratization of international relations, movements to increase the role of developing countries, the countries of the world majority, in the mechanisms of global governance. I mentioned the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the World Trade Organization. Of course, this work will continue in parallel with the creation, if you like, of our own system, independent of external risks. But this includes improving more equitable representation of the countries of the Global South and the Global East, in the mechanisms of global governance and reform of the UN, first of all its Security Council. And here we have clearly confirmed our position. We support exclusively increasing the representation of the countries of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, because the West is already unfairly represented there. Of the 15 members of the Security Council, 6 represent the West. This does not compete with any statistics regarding the population, industrial production, and the size of the respective countries. And specifically we support India, specifically we support Brazil, and specifically we support the collective initiative that the African Union is promoting with regard to reform of the Security Council. I would not have outlined all aspects of our work in Kazan if I had not touched upon several foreign policy topics that were voiced in the discussion and enshrined in the declaration. This particular attention was paid to the crisis in the Middle East, the catastrophe of the Palestinian people, the catastrophe that is now spilling over into neighboring countries, Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Yemen.
На сопредельные страны, Ливан, Ирак, Сирия, Йемен.
And the paragraph of the declaration on the urgent need to stop this bloodshed is quite strongly formulated there. And we did not leave. On the contrary, we spoke proactively in preparation for the summit and during the summit itself. The President touched on this topic, did not leave the discussion of the Ukrainian crisis. Agreed, I believe, a fundamentally important wording in the declaration. Within the framework of this formulation, in addition to the general confirmation by the countries of their well-known positions expressed at the UN General Assembly and at other forums, it was emphasized that the main thing now is to look for solutions. That will be based on the principles of the UN Charter in their entirety and interrelationship.
Будут основываться на принципах Устава ООН во всей их полноте и взаимосвязи.
So far, with regard to the Ukrainian crisis, there are numerous initiatives that we hear. Many of them are formulated with the best intentions, but none of these initiatives contain a phrase that the principles of that should be applied not selectively, but in their entirety.
Нет фразы о том, что принципы Устава ООН нужно применять не выборочно, а во всей их полноте.
What does this mean? The West prefers to talk about Ukraine, only recalling the principle of territorial integrity and formulating it in such a way, as if there are no other principles in the Charter. But the Charter also contains the principle of self-determination of peoples, and the General Assembly decided that it is necessary to respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all states, whose governments respect the principle of self-determination of peoples and, therefore, represent the entire population living on a given territory. But does the Russian regime, which settled in Kiev after the coup 10 years ago, does it represent the east, the southeast of Ukraine? The Crimea, which immediately refused to recognize the putschists 10 years ago. Before the principles of territorial integrity and self-representation of peoples are mentioned, they require all members of it to respect human rights, regardless of race, gender, language, and religion. The West, which shouts at every corner for any reason that it is a champion of human rights, has never mentioned this in the Ukrainian crisis at all. And the fact that the laws that have been adopted over the past 10 years and which prohibit the use of the Russian language in any sphere, in education, in the media, in culture, and in everyday life, grossly violate the UN Charter. Supporters of a settlement based on the principle of the Charter do not notice and do not want to notice it. Just as they did not notice the ban of the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Proceeding from all this, proceeding from the fact that the Nazi regime in Kiev grossly violates the key principles of the Charter, and the West praises it and says that, well done, you are defending European values, this should be brought to light. And in this sense, the fact that the declaration of the Kazan summit, for the first time, in relation to the Ukrainian crisis, consolidated an approach that requires respect for the principles of the Charter. It is in all their entirety and interrelationship. I consider this one of our main political achievements at this event, especially considering that the respected, influential, fast-growing, and politically active countries
на этом мероприятии, тем более с учетом того, что подписались под этой декларацией уважаемые, влиятельные, быстро растущие и политически активные страны. Так что вот видите, ну, наверное...
It is always possible to do something better, but we are happy with the way our presidency is going and how its culminating event went. Summit meetings in Kazan.
Sergey Viktorovich, thank you for this conversation.